What's up, everybody? It's Spencer Alessi, and this is the Esports Narrative. This is episode 10, and today we're talking with Theresa Gaffney. Theresa is the editor-in-chief of the Collegiate Star League, which offers leagues and tournaments where hundreds of universities compete in games like CSGO, League of Legends, Dota 2, Starcraft 2, Overwatch, and more. Theresa, welcome to the show.
Great, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So before we get started, I would like to know a little bit more about what your role as the editor-in-chief is and how you got to be working with the Collegiate Star League.
Great. I think for me, the story is long, so I'll try to give the TLDR as best as possible. I've been with the CSL since 2011, and there really wasn't so much an editor-in-chief role there yet. There was someone working in that capacity, but, what I do there now really didn't exist there then. So I'll kind of summarize it in my history through CSL. So CSL was primarily a volunteer-based organization run through the passion of college esports fans throughout the nation starting in 2009. And, I caught onto that wind in 2011, started as a Starcraft 2 writer, worked with other talented writers and editors, and obviously other, head staff there, and kind of grew from there. We only had Starcraft 2 when I started, leaping off that Brood War history, then slowly started bringing on other titles like League of Legends, Dota, so on and so forth, as I've already indicated. And as our game titles grew, I grew into a more managerial position, and now I oversee all the written and some video content that comes out of the CSL. It became a full-time position a couple of years ago, and I've been glad to kind of see this wild ride out.
Awesome. Now, are you guys focusing more and more on video content? Do you feel like that indexes more than written content, or are you seeing that written is still holding its own in the esports industry?
That's a good question. There's always debates on that, and we've seen outlets open and close. That's something that we still have to debate where content in general in the digital market sits, right? So when we look at social media, a lot of what we're consuming is visual, whether it's, static or, moving, regular VOD content. But there's still room for writing, and there's still a lot of people that want to see things written out, explained to them, and, engaging on that level, because, I still see a lot of people writing on Medium. I'm still seeing a lot of people sharing articles on social media. So we kind of fill the role of providing the only consistent source of written coverage of collegiate esports that allows us to do all different sorts of things that you can't always do on video for collegiate, because it's not always possible to get these teams on video or whatnot. So we do our best to give them an opportunity to speak their minds, tell their stories in a, kind of like narrative context. But with that being said, we are growing that video content database. We already stream all of our broadcasts as much as possible, but there is still room for video interviews, guides and whatnot, so we are pretty much since the past year, we're adding on more of that content. We're trying to visit actual campuses to get interviews from teams that we know are comfortable with that, and we have preparing like strategy guides for people hopping into titles that, since we're Collegiate Star League, we know we may be a more open point of entry for newer players. So, we did a whole training ground series for CSGO last year. We're going to probably pick it up again and do more of that. But, as much as I want to say, video's the way to go, I can't see writing as being dead, and I never will, because as long as we have, smartphones and screens in front of us, I think people are still going to be accessing written content. Of course. So we balance it.
Of course, yeah, and video is definitely indexing really well now, especially the way that consumers are consuming media. But just as it is the case of books, written form is still by no means going away.
Absolutely not.
Now, what does esports mean to you?
That's always a very interesting question because I feel like esports' meaning to me changes over time in terms of my personal relationship with it. But in the overall, esports means to me a competitive outlet for people who are good at something besides traditional sports. It means that you are able to show off what you do best in a new, exciting arena. I think the potential is so exciting, and that's what drew me into it. So I like to hold on to my initial passion for esports at the very core as being this exciting new venue for very talented individuals to show off their competitive side in different titles. But it also just personally means to me, this family that I've built up at CSL all these years. It's a very one-on-one experience when, you've seen some of the same people all these years still work with you and see them grow as people. And esports does allow you to grow those kind of connections. So there's something intangible you can't really explain when you've been in the industry for a longer time and you deal with a lot of, really dynamic people who, care about what they're doing. So I think there's that one level where it's that basic. Everybody understands what esports it is. It's new. It's dynamic. It's fun. It's competitive. But there's also the personal family feeling you get for being there for such a long time and, understand who works with you.
Mm-hmm. Now we're going to take a little bit of a journey through the ups and downs maybe of your career. Tell the listeners, what's been the worst moment for you so far in esports?
So from my personal career perspective?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an interesting question. I think the worst moment, I would say it's not worst, it's just the most challenging moment, would be where, we had this transitional period between being fully volunteer and having, paid positions. And in that span of time, I went to Korea to teach English at a college. And so I moved my life over there and, I spent a good year there. And in that time, during that year, I was presented this, challenge. Do I stay in Korea and, continue my educational career, or do I come back to the United States where our business is primarily located? We did some international events, but, most of our work is here. So we, that position was kind of left on the table for me, and I had to make a choice when my contract was up, if I renew or, jump on to America. And that was not the worst moment, obviously. It was just one of the hardest decisions I had to make. I'd gotten comfortable. I liked my job there, but I really saw more potential in my work here. So I had to make a big decision, and I had a whole crying thing at the airport. Goodbye, Korea. It was great. And there was that transition from there back to the United States that was difficult. But I saw I saw the first half of the season out while I was in Korea, and the second half of it I saw out while I was in the United States. And when we made it to DreamHack that year and we finished the season, it felt like a big accomplishment. And that point, it really felt like I made the right choice.
Now, what's been the biggest accomplishment for you so far? And going from the most challenging moment, what's been the biggest accomplishment for you?
So since that kind of transitional year, which was the beginning of 2016 till now, I think probably one of the biggest accomplishments professionally, I could say that, happened was helping acquire this partnership with Campus Insider. So, we provide them their source of collegiate esports content. That was huge because, this question about is written work, viable, in this field? Yes, it still is. And they provide video, but they also provide written, college sports news. And we now give them their content for esports. So that was a big accomplishment. And also starting this transition into being able to produce video content regularly was a big accomplishment. And I think that, aside from becoming an actual job, which in itself is personally fulfilling, I think helping land these partnerships and making sure that CSL is growing instead of stagnating, that's a big deal for me.
Now, how many games total are there?
last season we had 5 games in like the regular season, and we had Madden as well in the spring. But this year we're bringing on more titles. We have a couple of weeks before all of these are announced, but we're going to have definitely more than 5. We're going to probably have another console title. We're bringing back the CSGO, Dota League. Then we'll have the Vainglory and Starcraft main leagues. That's the year-long leagues. Madden will be coming back. I believe that's going to be split up in 2 semesters. I'm not sure yet, so you'll have to wait for the announcement. But we also have an exciting announcement coming up this weekend that we're happy to bring on another title. So I'm going to kind of keep the pin on that until we actually put out the release.
Now, do you see any one game having more traction or becoming more and more popular in the collegiate scene?
I think League is far and beyond, the most popular. It's the most accessible, and Riot helps, make sure that scene is healthy by supporting clubs with their, ULO program, and we help provide tournament structure and overall just satisfaction. So I think the people who play League of Legends are the happiest, and they're the biggest scene, and that's for a reason. The other bigger, scenes I've seen grow is CSGO. It's been good and healthy. These teams are really knowledgeable and enjoy playing and also teaching others. So it's been a pleasure to work with them and see them grow. Not just at CSL, the other collegiate organizations too, that sometimes run small tournaments, and hopefully they're enjoying growth as well. So I think CSGO is very promising, because on the pro level we've seen it on cable, we've seen it at big stadiums. So I think CSGO is hoping to sustain growth. Dota is healthy too. I think it's a harder game, so it does provide some, barrier of entry. It's not that CSGO isn't hard. It's just, I think Dota has a special level of complexity. That's what makes it so exciting to watch when you do get on that level. And, Starcraft has kind of coagulated. It's kind of stayed at this very, core level that you see a lot of familiar faces playing on the collegiate side that also play in the pro, and that makes it good to watch too. It's just not particularly growing, but we'll see. Maybe there'll be something down the line that we do with the Starcraft remastered, that we'll have a new growing scene. Who knows? But I would definitely say League is biggest and CSGO is growing.
Now, what do you think makes esports so exciting?
Well, that's again very personal question, and I think that for me the most exciting part of esports is watching the stories develop on the team level and personal level, and that comes from my experience as an editor-in-chief, asking people to please find the hook in this article or this video, and we're training ourselves to look for what drives you to watch. It's like when I was younger, I used to watch pro wrestling a lot. I mean, I still do, but not as much. But I always looked for the angles, and I always gravitated towards the big, personalities. And I think esports provides that, but it's still kind of honing in on what makes matches and stories and rivalries important. So I think that that's actually the most exciting part, seeing this attitude towards esports content change over the years. You see these stories build up. You have brand names out of these teams that are successful, like Team Liquid, who just recently won the international. Following them for years means you have a pedigree, and that's it's a fun thing to follow and fun thing to finally see them grab that Dota title. There's a lot of that you're able to do after a certain amount of years and experience, and we're at this point now that there's a kind of it could have gone south, but it's only getting stronger. It's I'm glad that we have teams sticking around and creating more stories and the people driving it. I think that we're going to see even more, of this with whatever creative approaches are in esports, whether it's collegiate or, you have the Overwatch League in cities. We're going to see different stories pop out of that. So it's just going to be, that's the most exciting part about esports right now, that change. We're at a crossroads, and it's going to be really good to follow.
Now, how important is it for media outlets, leagues, content creators, storytellers, how important is it for us to create content around those stories and try and pick out those personalities like you mentioned? How important is that to the ecosystem of esports and its continued growth? How important is that?
Oh, it's so important, because if you don't find an angle for people to enjoy esports, they're just not going to be returning customers, so to speak, to use that dirty word. But if you're trying to find new people to be involved in your product, you have to find a reason for them to watch. So you might have, basic reasons for players to watch esports, but you want to get non-players to also be interested. So finding these stories gets people to turn on, whether it's an ESPN or a Facebook Live or, a Twitch channel, to watch these broadcasts. You have to pick out a story. You have to work with the casters to develop these storylines, the writers, the general producers of these programs, in order to capture the viewer. So unless you do know the backstory on who's playing, it's just not going to be as engaging. That's why there is an interesting element to the collegiate scene, that there's built-in stories from campuses. Like, this is a huge school in the traditional sports, sector. Let's see if they're also going to match up in esports. But it's also now becoming that there's like collegiate dynasty schools that you can follow that story, and you have to follow those stories, or there's no reason for the viewer to really grasp onto it. So, finding personalities is 10 times more important, but sometimes it's a little bit hard to get that out of a singular player on a team side, but you do your best to at least get the story, the drama out of that team as a whole.
Yeah, and as players continue to brand themselves and create their own storylines, and as collegiate teams pop up, there's big name collegiate teams out there. I don't know the current number of the total number of colleges that have a collegiate esports team, but I know that Carnegie Mellon has one, Harvard. I mean, big colleges, very well-known colleges, even Ivy League colleges have esports teams now, and that in itself is a storyline. And you look at something like basketball with Duke, they didn't become Duke, all of a sudden. They had a story, they have a history of being an incredible basketball team, and likewise with other football, basketball, baseball teams in the collegiate scene. So as these storylines continue to develop, I think we'll see more and more brands, both on the college side and on the player side, and have that transition into the pro scene as well.
I agree. Yeah, and you're right. It is kind of surprising, but not, to see that Ivy Leagues are involved in esports. I mean, you would think that they have their nose turned up at anything, that's not academic, but that's not true. I mean, CSL started off with Mona Zhang thinking about this at her Ivy League school, Princeton, and she linked up with Durant, and that was an idea born of these so-called, smarty pants schools where they wouldn't be involved with this, but they are, and they love it. And MIT was one of the first schools to get involved, and you'll see that they're a big driving reason that esports is successful in North America too. The more that these schools and these people that go to these schools love it and, show their love for it and create these stories and content surrounding esports, you're going to see esports on the wider level growing here.
Yeah, I think esports for college is a no-brainer, and in 3 to 5 years, I think every college is going to offer it, and it's just going to be like, the norm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this is the part of the show called the 5-question combo breaker. So what it is, I just ask 5 questions. You tell me what you're thinking off the top of your head. It doesn't have to be one-word answers. It's just kind of a funny play on words that I like to do to break up the show. So the first question is, best advice someone has ever given you?
Be succinct. Because I used to write very academically, and I had to kind of restructure my thinking. So as a content provider, as a writer, as an editor, I had to learn how to bring my ideas together, tell them clearly, and it made a huge difference in my writing style. From 2011 to today, worlds of difference on every level, from esports to professional writing. I'm just 10 times better.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the esports industry needs to continue to grow and be successful?
continued non-endemic sponsors to come in and support it. I think that, we need to get out of that, the only computer provider type of, sponsor that comes into the events, and you need more Coca-Colas and whatnot, to widen the barriers that we have. We're very closed off still compared to other, industries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you think the Arby's and hosting or sponsoring E-League and Chipotle, sponsoring Optic, you think they're all well and good?
Yes, and we need more of that just in general. I think that's the only way to get more eyes on the product. I understand that reticence to keep away people who don't understand esports. Let's be sponsored by people that understand it. But at the same time, once you're able to learn how to explain esports to more of these brands that normally wouldn't understand it, then you've got something. That's what will mean that esports is successful, because it's transcendent, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. What's the best play you've ever seen, or the most memorable moment for you in esports?
That's a good question. Most memorable moment for me on a professional level, it's always the easiest one to say, because I've seen a lot of pro and collegiate moments. I think probably one of my most memorable moments was seeing CUNY Baruch win at the CSGO finals at CSL in May, because I'm from New York, and New York is not super well known for its esports scene, especially not collegiately. There are a lot of teams out of here, but not successful ones. So I was so happy to see that crew just take the title. For me, that was huge. It means that we have more potential in the East Coast side for esports, and I know that's gonna grow esports here to a wider degree, because we have a lot of West Coast representation, a lot of Canadian representation, but we definitely need more in this tri-state area.
Mm-hmm. Share a valuable resource that's been beneficial to you in your career.
Valuable resource. Oh man, that's hard. But I think obviously every writer is going to use Google to just find whatever they need to verify their sources. But I think the most valuable resource for me was my coworker Peter Zhang in the beginning, to kind of teach me more about esports writing, and then Duran Parsi, the CSL CEO, and he was a huge resource for just kind of give me all the feedback I needed to grow. If I didn't have these coworkers who were more experienced than me help me grow, I don't think I could have stayed as long as I have in esports. So finding these kind of sort of mentor figures, these champions of you, so to speak, those are super important to find in your career, whether it's esports or not.
Yeah, definitely. It's so crucial to have someone to not only look up to, but somebody that can kind of guide you along and give you that feedback, like you said.
Yeah.
What's one daily habit that's been the biggest factor to your success?
Okay, I have this habit where I set 3 alarms to start the day, and then I put on Spotify to wake me up, and then I check my calendar, and I do that on a daily basis. If I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't wake up diligently enough to get as much as I have to get done in a day. So I live by my Google Calendar, my reminders, and this short little morning routine that I have just to wake me up. 3 alarms, quick Spotify blast, and check my calendar and get on it, because if I didn't do that, I back up really hard. My calendar and my tasks, pile up. Otherwise, I'm sure anybody who does any sort of job knows how that feels. But working from home is super challenging, so you have to push yourself. We travel for events, and otherwise it's remote, so I have to be super disciplined.
Now, what time do you wake up, and what's on your Spotify playlist in the morning?
Good question. I usually wake up between 8:30 and 9 on a good day. Most of the time it'll be that. I'm pretty diligent during the week about that. Weekends might be a little bit later, but right now I'm rocking a lot of prog rock. I'm listening to Steven Wilson. He has a new album coming out in a week. He's one of my favorite producers, writers forever. Kind of like a metalhead, so I'll gravitate to the heavier stuff in the morning. So that gets me going, gets me ready. And then during work hours, it's kind of more of that playlist, like the calm, peaceful piano playlist on Spotify. So that kind of keeps me chill. And if I have too much in terms of like music with words and heavy rhythms, I get distracted.
So you got heavy metal, head smashing in the morning to wake you up, and then you got the chilled out piano music during a workday.
Yeah, I also play keyboard, so I like to listen to that too, just to keep me artistically. Also, I can't listen to empty music, so it has to be something of value. So the piano stuff usually works.
Do you find inspiration from music, or where do you get inspiration from other sources for writing?
Yeah, all the time. Music is my second love, I guess. And career-wise, esports is my love. And in terms of hobby, I think music is my love. I'm in a band. I play keyboards with them, and if I didn't do that, I don't think I get the kind of like energy out that gets pent up when you work, on something for long periods of time. So it's a good way to start my day, and it's a good way to close out the weekend when we jam. And also, like, for writing, I think a lot of writers tend to listen to music when they're working on, their stuff. They put headphones on to drown out, noise around them. At least I do, and a lot of writers I work with do that, and they kind of enjoy that process of blocking out the world while they focus on what they need to do. I think you can find inspiration for writing in everything. If you are not a receptive person to the world, then that means you're probably not very good in writing, or at least not very much engaging to read. So I think that, like I said, I found inspiration in professional wrestling. I can find it anywhere. So I think music is like my biggest inspiration, but maybe wrestling's over there somewhere too.
Sure. Now here's a crazy question. If you weren't in esports and you weren't a editor-in-chief for CSL, what would you be doing?
I'd probably be teaching still, whether it's ESL or social studies. I have a certificate to teach, so I'd probably be doing that. But I kind of feel like I'm still, in the educational field in an outlying sort of way. So I'm still fulfilling that desire. So I think I would definitely be a teacher if I wasn't an editor. Nice.
Now, we'll close out the show with you giving us your perspective on what it takes to be successful in esports, maybe from your editorial or journalistic standpoint, and also just share with the listeners where they can, engage with you online.
Great. We actually did a panel at the CSL Grand Finals this year about careers in esports, and I think we kind of hit some really important nails on the head there. And if anyone's interested, they can go to the CSL YouTube channel. Just look up Collegiate Star League on YouTube and look for the careers in esports panel from May 2017. It was in TLDR. I think the most important thing we said was just get your feet wet, get in there. Don't hesitate to get involved at any level locally that you can get involved with. Being successful in esports requires diligence, good networking, and creativity. And it just takes creating relationships that are genuine with other people that enjoy what you do and you enjoy them. Getting that kind of mentorship and that cheerleading squad that you need to do what you do. You have to really want to do esports in a way that isn't just saying, I'm going to be a random consultant about esports when you know nothing. No, you have to come in with a tangible skill, whether it's as a writer, a broadcaster, a production hand, or a player. You have to have something to give to esports, and you have to be able and willing to explain why you can contribute and be giving of your time and go from there and keep exploring the routes that are available to you. And you can't give up. If that's what you have your dream in, you should keep pursuing it as best you can. And I think that we're seeing a lot of stories like that now come into fruition. People who are, especially on collegiate side, they come and they get involved in their college teams. They do some work on their campuses, and then some of them graduate and even go working further in esports. So it's nice to see that formula kind of works.
Now, you bring up a good point, and I think this question will provide a lot of value to people listening in who are in this kind of position, if you're just getting into esports, let's say you want to be a writer in esports, how important is it for you to maybe do some work on spec or write on Medium, post your stuff online, as much content as you can to get your name out there, and then wait, or not wait, but necessarily, let some of the opportunity come to you, so to speak. If you're putting your content out there, maybe you're tagging distributors on Twitter and things like that, how important is it for someone starting out to actually just start writing and not wait for someone to give you a paying job, but just to start producing content?
Yeah, I think that there's, free work is a dirty word in this field, because given that, for some people at least, that, a lot of experience early in esports was, free work, volunteer being given up to people, and sometimes people got burned and they didn't feel like they got anything in return. But really, how are you going to create a portfolio from nothing if you don't just start writing? So people, I think, who are smart realize their ability to produce, it doesn't lie in the fact that they have to get paid in the beginning. They're going to do it because they want to grow their portfolio, and they do it whether it's for free or little paying. They do it because they want to. You have to be able to say, okay, now I'm going to start looking for opportunities that pay. You start looking and branching out then. But you can't just walk into a job and be like, I want to talk about esports, and you have no esports experience. It might be very difficult to sell yourself. So just get out there, start producing content, start figuring out what you love. Again, it goes back to the question about what it takes to be successful. You have to figure out what you do best and how you can provide something to others. So if you are good at analytics, maybe you want to crunch some data and you want to tell stories based on that data, get really good at that. Or maybe you're kind of more of a personality type, get really good at casting or writing features, whatever you want to do. So yeah, you have to start creating, and you have to start putting yourself out there. And, Medium's a great source for writers. I recently wrote something about Overwatch. I just got picked up on one of their gaming blogs. They really just look to help you sometimes too. If you write quality content, they will pick you up. It'll be free. It's your own blog, so to speak, but you might get some, shares, and it'll be worthwhile. You can start looking for organizations like CSL that are hiring during the season. You can look at other people that might need, help, and maybe it's your personal esports club, or maybe it's some other content provider, eventually, but start definitely writing. Start creating a podcast or a, video channel on YouTube that works for your interest, but define your interests first.
I like that you dropped a podcast there, because that's exactly what I'm doing.
Hey.
I have a day job. This is a side hustle for me. I'm not asking for donations, or I don't have a Patreon page, or I'm not pushing T-shirts and things like that. I'm actually just eating my own words and creating content, seeing if it's even liked out there first, and then, maybe there'll be an opportunity down the road to cash in, so to speak, and be able to produce something of value that people will want to pay for. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people have this romantic viewpoint that they should be paid every single time that they do work, when they have no body of work, they have no experience, they have no portfolio, like you said. All they literally have is their time. And if all you have is time, I mean, you can get a lot done in a day, and you can show a lot of content in a day. You can produce a lot, quality, no matter what you're doing, and put it out there. And if people like it, you'll get noticed for sure. And it's only a matter of time before the right person notices, and you maybe get picked up as a staff writer or a photographer, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think you're taking the right approach, and I think that we've all started in that position, and I think what you did was define what you want to do, and you said, I'm going to do a podcast, and I'm going to see if this gets picked up, and I'm going to pursue this line of thinking, and that's the best way to do it. Don't just create a business card and say, I want to do esports, and hand it out to people and hope you'll fill one of their positions. So that's my only word of warning to anybody wanting to get in, at this point.
Yeah, and I had Marty from Splice on a couple episodes ago, and he talked about the I Heart Esports, type of person, and that's really true. And what he was getting at was that you can't just love esports. You have to have some thing of value, like you said. You have to have some skill set, whether it's in esports or not. You have to have some sort of skill set that's valuable to whoever you're trying to get a paycheck from. So you got to keep that in mind. You know, you might not have esports knowledge, quote unquote, but you might be a good video editor or a good writer, or you might be a good social media person or a branding person. You know, whatever it is, you have to have some tangible skills. It's not like esports is any different from any other industry. If you want to get hired, you have to have some skills in something.
Yeah, agreed. And in all respects, I mean, there are people that walk into their career journey not knowing what they want to do, but they eventually hone in on it. So make it quicker than, than anything. Figure out what you want to do sooner is what I'm trying to say. So you don't waste time.
And you learn by doing, right? Like if you're not sure, if you love graphic design and you love taking photos, but you also love writing, do everything. Spend a couple months doing each and everything. Try it. Do it. Learn. You learn by doing. You learn by feeling it out and trying new things.
Yeah, and I think content, is dynamic. So if you're a writer, you can also take pictures to accompany your piece, and you can also do video. Mm-hmm. So there's really no way to say, oh no, I don't need someone who also does video. So that is also fair. Learn to up all your skills, but figure out which one you do best and try to hone in on that.
Yeah, and I think the age-old saying of a jack of all trades is a master of none couldn't be more inaccurate in today's day and age. I think, personally, that jack of all trades are more valuable than people with just one specific skill, because I think it's more sellable, it's more tangible to have multiple skills in different areas, because you're more malleable, you're more flexible to the esports industry, and it being such a young industry, and I'll put that in air quotes, young. It's not really that young. I mean, it is, but it's not at the same time. But that being said, I think having a lot of different skill sets proves very valuable in this industry because of the opportunity that's out there. You can be flexible. You're not pigeonholing yourself into one tiny little, skill set.
Yeah, and I think good managers know a little bit of everything. So if your aspiration down the line is to have a managerial role, maybe you do want to learn a little bit of everything anyway.
Well, thank you so much, Theresa, for coming on the show and sharing your esports narrative with me and all of the podcast listeners. I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope the best of luck for you going forward in the CSL and everything that you do, and thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, Spencer. Check out CSL's Twitter accounts, Facebook pages, cstarleague.com, and you can check out my witticisms at Theresa Gaffney on Twitter. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, and we'll make sure we link up all the things you mentioned in the show notes, and we will put all that good information in there. I just want to remind everyone that if this all goes as planned, this show is just the beginning. Thank you, listeners. I really appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a rating on iTunes. I would love a 5-star, but if you think I deserve a 1, let me have it and tell me why.